Have you ever noticed a crack in your driveway getting wider or a door that suddenly seems to stick for no reason? These could be signs that the ground beneath your feet is actually sinking. The secret behind this hidden threat is close to home for many throughout the world, and most people aren't even aware that this is happening. In this video, we will explore the truth behind why we are sinking and what is being done to try and counteract this hidden threat that we call subsidence. First, let's start with the basics. The ground beneath us is made up of layers and layers of dirt and rock, which engineers and geologists call soil and bedrock. Now, imagine that these layers of soil beneath us are actually acting like a giant underground sponge filled with water, called groundwater. These natural sponges are called aquifers, and they're crucial for storing our fresh groundwater. In many parts of the world, us humans rely on this fresh groundwater for clean drinking water and agriculture. So, in order to get this water out, imagine us poking giant straws into this sponge and sucking out the water. And we do this using pumps to fill our wells. But when we suck this water out faster than the earth can naturally refill its supply, engineers call this excessive groundwater pumping. So, what happens when we continue to do this time and time again? Excessive groundwater pumping causes the ground to be left with empty spaces where the water once was, creating a void in the ground. And if the earth can't refill those voids with water fast enough, the ground naturally finds other ways to do so. The material above the voids collapses downward, ultimately causing the surface to sink. It's like a deflated balloon. The land wrinkles and settles to fill those empty voids. This settling and sinking of the ground is called subsidence, and this type of subsidence is called human-induced subsidence. While subsidence is actually a process that can happen naturally for various reasons, human-induced subsidence is an issue that is largely impacting California's Central Valley, which is a region that produces agriculture that feeds not just the state, but a significant portion of the world. Over a third of the United States' vegetables and nearly 3/4 of the country's fruits and nuts are grown in California. And California's agricultural exports have been upwards of $22.5 billion. So, naturally, you can imagine that the farmers of California have needed a hefty supply of water for irrigating their crops, especially during periods of drought. In order to keep up with their water needs, they have needed to rely on groundwater pumping, which has unfortunately led to subsidence. This intense pumping has led to some areas sinking as much as 28 feet over the past century, which is roughly the height of a 3-story building. And some areas are continuing to sink at a rate of more than a foot every year. The consequences of this sinking land are serious. The canals and pipelines that are used to transport water across the state for water delivery have become damaged, increasing water loss and requiring expensive repairs. And less water is being delivered due to the reduced capacity of the infrastructure. We have seen buildings experience foundation problems, which have led to cracks and unstable structures, potentially jeopardizing their safety, especially in a state prone to earthquakes. Additionally, as the land subsides, it can now change how water moves and drains across the surface of the ground, increasing the risk of flooding in some areas while leaving others drier and more susceptible to drought. But California isn't the only place that subsidence is impacting the ground beneath our feet. This phenomenon is a global challenge. Subsidence is a hidden threat affecting countries around the world, with each location having its own story to tell. In Mexico City, excessive groundwater pumping is causing the historic city center to sink at an alarming rate due to the depletion of groundwater. This dramatic subsidence reached a total of over 60 feet in the 20th century and has led to structural damage to their iconic buildings. Buildings are leaning precariously and infrastructure is at risk of collapse, introducing a serious threat to the safety of its residents. Additionally, flooding has become a major concern as the sinking land is allowing water to accumulate in certain areas due to the uneven terrain. Another example is Venice, Italy, or as some refer to it as the floating city. This famous city is slowly sinking into the Adriatic Sea. But this isn't happening just because of subsidence. Rising sea levels due to other factors like climate change is creating a sinking effect. which has led to frequent flooding, threatening damage to historical buildings and its world-famous canals as they become increasingly submerged. High tides are causing a major threat to the city's architectural treasures, which could eventually force residents to abandon Venice altogether. Meanwhile, in Jakarta, Indonesia, the situation is dire. The city is sinking faster than any other major city in the world, mainly due to subsidence caused by excessive groundwater pumping and the soft type of soil that is located there. Because of the fast rate of subsidence, there are parts of the city that are sinking several centimeters every year, which is allowing salt water from the ocean to creep into the freshwater supply, causing contamination and potential health risks to its residents. Damage to roads and buildings are also ongoing. The millions of residents are at risk of displacement as the land continues to sink beneath them. Now, having said all this, there is still hope for the future. Engineers have been working hard to find solutions, and in many of these places, these solutions are being put into play. In California, the California Department of Water Resources, also called DWR, has now launched into a full-blown subsidence program by recognizing and understanding the threat of the sinking ground and working to carry out their many solutions. DWR is trying to increase public awareness of the threat of subsidence and encourages practices like using water more efficiently in agriculture and urban areas. Alternatives like drip irrigation for crops, installing low-flow showerheads and toilets in homes, and capturing rainwater for later use are just some of the changes that can help. DWR is also working with local agencies to monitor groundwater levels so that they can help balance the amount of water pumped out of the ground with the amount that the ground will naturally replenish. Additionally, DWR engineers are working to find alternative water sources so that its agricultural community does not need to rely only on groundwater for their crops. And to help correct the impacts that subsidence has already had on the state's infrastructure, engineers are actively working on the design and construction to repair its canals, pumping plants, and other water delivery facilities to help restore the capacity of its water system. In Jakarta, engineers are working on the construction of a massive national project that includes building a giant 46-kilometer or 28.5-mile-long coastal embankment that will act like a dam to protect its coastline from rising sea levels and storm surges. Jakarta is also working on regulating the amount of groundwater that residents can pump from the ground to prevent excessive groundwater pumping and reduce the rate of subsidence. Jakarta is also looking into alternative water sources, similar to California, and is looking into options like capturing rainwater or treating wastewater so it can be reused. These huge efforts in California and Jakarta can be translated to other parts of the world where subsidence is also a hidden threat. If we can better manage our groundwater resources, invest in infrastructure upgrades, and increase public awareness, we can help slow down the impacts of subsidence and possibly stop our cities from sinking. Subsidence may be a hidden threat, but by understanding the issue, taking action, and supporting the engineers designing the solutions, we can create a more secure future for ourselves and the environment together. Thanks for watching. Now that you have learned all about subsidence and why we are sinking, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you won't miss out on more engineering fun.